Alright, let's get this lighting just a tad bit better. I don't know if that helped or not, we'll see. I need to get one of those fancy lights. Let's share this with the rest of the world. Make sure that audio's all good. Audio. That's not the right button. That's the button. Built-in microphone. That's not it. There we go. Thought that sounded a little lame. That should be better. Let's just double post this out on the old Twittersville. So let's see here, and we're live. Boom. All right. Cool. All right, thanks everyone for joining. Looks like we got a couple people. I probably won't go too long today, but like I said in the original tweet, just looking to kind of get some motivation today, get back involved in Blueprint, and just kind of mess with this a little bit. So just kind of a bit of a lazy afternoon. Like I said, figured I'd try to do a little bit of work. So, all right. So like I said, something I wanted to revisit on Blueprint is the generation of tests. So let me just run the current test, make sure everything's good. Uh-oh. Before last doesn't exist. Oh, you know what? I think I bumped the Laravel support package to 6, but I haven't updated it on this machine, so let's see if that fixes the issue. Cool. So what I want to do is basically, at least today, kind of get the foundation laid for the test generation. So again, the whole goal of Blueprint, the whole, power of Blueprint is that from these like real simple, let's pull up one of these like README fixtures. So from these real simple Blueprint files, taking a look at the README example, from this YAML, you get a lot of different things. And so this is great when you're kind of initially generating code. So the last piece I think I want to do here for kind of that V1 completion, I've tagged V1, but just something I wanted to do from the very beginning was generate tests. So, it'd be very easy to loop over the controller action, generate an HTTP test that calls the appropriate route, that sets up some fake data. We already have the models generating factories. So all that's pretty good. We can, again, based on these statements, we kind of know, okay, well, that's going to kick out a return view. So we can do a view assertion. We can make sure that, these pieces of data, the view has that data, and even potentially, it lines up with the eloquent query from the database. We can verify validation and all that kind of stuff. So a lot of little pieces here. Again, don't think I'll get into every little nuance today. But what we can do is at least kind of set up that initial test, making a test fixture of expected output, for this README example, because it's pretty robust. Like it has dispatching jobs, so that's going to make us do queue fake. So again, anything you generate through Blueprint, you could get a test for, at least a test for the happy path. There's no logic in Blueprint, meaning there's no like if statements or so forth. All that business logic is going to be faster for you to add later. Again, the whole point of Blueprint is that super fast, rapid development from just writing a little bit of code. So I want to keep these really nice and tight. And eventually shareable, so that way it's even faster. You can share these between projects, between coworkers, possibly even like an online repository where you can go out, oh, I want to make a blog, here's a draft file, to do that, and then you can add your own customizations. So with that said, let's generate this kind of initial expected fixture. So kind of starting with the tests today. Like I said, I don't think I'll get in to the nuance of code generation. I kind of got a limited afternoon availability, so let's just spend about a half hour and see kind of how far I can get with generating some HTTP tests. So let's make a new folder, and we'll just call this tests. And inside of here, I'm going to expect like a post feature test, let's say. So let's say something like new PHP files, fine. So let's call this a post controller test. .php extension's already going to happen. Cool. And we also, what else is in that README? I think like a comment. Does it have? Does it have a comment controller? I don't know if it has two. Oh no, it just has two actions on the same controller. Okay, so we'll make additional tests to test things that maybe this doesn't. But again, I think this README example is pretty comprehensive. So let's kind of write what these tests would be, kind of the long way with Laravel. So just kind of jumping out to another project. Oh, good. Composer ran, so let's make sure all of our tests pass. There we go. So it was just a little composer issue there. All tests on master are currently passing. And to that point, let's check out a new branch. So test generation. Cool. And I don't want to commit the composer lock file, so let's just check that back out. That's probably something I need to do on master. So the only thing I should have here when I run git status is a little shorthand here for the test fixtures and then the test that it actually outputs. So I'm going to cheat here. I'm going to go back to Laravel shift, and I'm going to do PHP artisan make test. And by default, this is going to give me a feature test, and we'll just call this post controller test. And we'll run a GST here, and let's just PB copy that. Cool. And I should get, so this is going to be giving me a base test. So again, we're just going to kind of start here and demonstrate what this test should kind of give me out of the box. And to that point, I'm probably going to need a stub. So since I have this in my paste buffer, I'm going to go ahead and jump ahead and make this file as well. It won't be a PHP file. It looks like I'm calling these .stub. So let's just do test and then class.stub. And this will be, I think we've been calling these dummy namespace. This is just kind of follows suits with all the, this is dummy class. And then we'll have something here like, whoops. Oh my gosh, there we go. Test cases, ... 1, 2, 3, 4, there we go. All right, so this kind of gives us the base test class that we're going to use. And it's, again, this is similar to like our other stuff. So if we go look at the class stub for a model, you see kind of the same thing. This dummy namespace, dummy class, and then, whoops, we're using ... here. So let's do that. All right, cool. So this gives us the stub. Again, had it in the paste buffer, so I'm going to jump ahead because we know we need that. But now what I want to do is fill this in with like a real test of what this would be. And so all this is going to take a little bit of a minute. So like I said, this is something that we'll do kind of in the start. So cool. Feel free to send over any comments, questions along the way. I'll check them every now and then. Looks like someone said, "What's up? What's up?" Okay, cool. So let's see, post index. So what we should do here is, let's change this. We're going to do route and then post dot index. So that's going to get us here, and that's going to give us a response. And this one we should probably assert OK. Let's drop that 200, and then we'll say response assert view is. And these assertions may or may not be exactly correct. I will verify them later, or like I said, feel free to correct me in the comments. And then it should have posts, and ideally, those posts are going to be the posts that maybe we set up in the database. So there's a couple different ways to handle this. We could simply do something like post all. That's a little bit ugly, but I'm going to do it for now. And like I said, we'll just kind of see where this gets us later. So in a very default application, this is going to be the app post model, and whatever we put in the database should be that. And to that point, we're going to need to make some post class, and we'll make like 3 of them or something like that. So we'll do a factory of the post class and generate 3 of them. So that's everything we need to set this up to run that query successfully. and then basically we're going to just get that route. We have no knowledge of middleware or anything like that. Again, this might be under some middleware, but again, that's all customizations you can do after the fact. This would be a pretty good start if it gave us something like this. And so we'll say something here like index uh, displays view or something like that. And I'm going to condense this down to just be at test. And I like to do, this is something I like to do, I like to just have like a little at C here. And this would be something like app, HTTP, controllers, post controller. And this just gives you nice clickability when you're inside certain IDEs. For example, I'm in PHP Storm. I could click this and see the subject under test, or the subject or soot or whatever you like to call it. So the thing I'm testing gives me just nice click completion for that. Okay, so that's going to be good for index. And let's do this here. And now we're going to do store. And we'll do something like store uses form request validation. And so the first part is going to be testing for that. And so I think I have an assert action uses form request. This is a assertion I made in a sample package. So it'll be included with Blueprint, or Blueprint will generate assertions that also use that package. So the format for this is basically the controller, controllers, post controller class. It's the action, so in this case store, and then it's going to be the form request that we expect it to use. So HTTP request post store request. There it is. Cool. So it'll look something like that. That basically will just verify the linkage. Again, it doesn't verify, all the different kind of integration type tests that you could do, but it just gives you a little bit of a sanity check. And again, you can add those later. So let's make another one of these, and we'll say store redirects to something. So store returns a redirect. All right, so let's do that, and this will be a real similar setup. So ultimately this test will look, what is it going to look like? We're making a new post, so there's going to be no reason to seed the database. So we can get rid of that. And we're going to call post store, store, and the test is going to need to be smart enough to know that it's a post request. And we're also going to need to be smart enough to know to send it some data. So in this case, we're going to need to know to send it title. That means we're going to have to look at the model, or Blueprint is going to have to look at the model, determine what title is, and ideally use some fake data. So we'll say like this faker title. Maybe we'll say title is like sentence 3 and who knows? I think you have to return true here to get it back as a string. And it doesn't know what faker is, so let's correct that here in just a second. And then content, same thing. Or actually, I think this is like words. So title is just like 3 words. That's fine. And then content can be sentences 3. And again, I'll check this later, but one of these requires you to like return it as a string. Otherwise, it gives you an array. I'm just not sure which one, so I'm going to put them both there for now. We should assert redirect, so we can say redirect or assert redirect route, and then this will be post index. Looks like we're flashing something here, so that should be cool. So we could say assert session has and post dot title. What are we calling that? What do I call that in the actual controller? Let's find out. I forgot what code is generated for that. So we flash post.title. Huh. What I'm thinking here is, I'm pretty sure if you flash something or you send something to the session in dot notation, it's going to make a nested array. And I've actually run into some issues with that. So this might be a minor tweak that I do, but I might like slugify that or snake case it or something. Part of me likes the hash, like developer-wise, like if you were storing other things in post. But I remember running into some issues when I did some stuff like that and then tried to get it out later. Um, Things don't just work the way, they don't work as smoothly as just like a key. It's not that it doesn't work, it's just, I remember there being some little thing that I got tripped up on one time and I realized, oh, it's because I'm using dot notation. Anyways, for now, we'll keep this, and this is going to need to be post title, which leads us to an issue here. We need to know what post is. So let's fix that. So we'll say, whoops, not add field. What was that about? Come on, PHP Storm. Let's do initialize with value. And we're going to want to query this from the database. So we'll say something like post where title is whatever we sent across. Whoops. Title. So we're going to have to fix that. And where. And we'll say content is content. And we're going to get those. And this will technically be posts. And then we can do a sanity check here to say assert count 1 on posts. So you didn't store something twice, right? You didn't call save twice or something random. So we're going to get all the posts that match the criteria that we passed in, because that's all the information we have to go on. Again, this is store, not update, so we can't just pull the exact one and do the comparison. So the test is going to have to be a little bit verbose and kind of how it checks all that out. So before we start messing with the response, we're going to want to mess with something like that. And then provided this is all good, we'll say post equals post first, just for a shorthand. So we're going to want to generate kind of all of that stuff. And again, this is actually going to need to be initialized. So we'll do that as null and content. And let's actually, should have done that up here. So let's do title. And let's do it here as well for content. Great. Okay, so now we have everything we need. We're going to store off that faker data as part of our arranging of the test, part of our test setup. Then we're going to act or execute the code by sending an HTTP request, and then we're going to make our assertions or verify the test, or the code did the right thing. So before I forget, we actually did want that change, so with faker, and of course with refresh database. Okay, so let's see where we left off here. This is a pretty large test that you're going to get from this. This is pretty cool. It's just going to make Blueprint that much more useful. And it was kind of funny, just as a tangent real quick while I get a little quick drink of water here, or tea. Someone asked me on Twitter the other day, hey, if you use Blueprint, like, how does that fit in with something like TDD? And, my answer was kind of like, well, you'd have to kind of practice TDD. You wouldn't be able to practice TDD at like the nanocycle, like where you explicitly follow, very, very strictly the 3 laws of TDD. So you can't write any code, until you write a test, right? Because obviously this is going to generate code for you. So my answer was basically that, well, you could write the test up front, which as we see here is definitely breaking, those strict laws of TDD. That would be kind of like a mega cycle where you're writing the complete test before the code. So, there's some nuance there and definitely ways to pick at that and say it's not TDD. You could write the test after the fact, after using Blueprint, but before you started customizing the code. So there's ways to still kind of honor TDD, but of course it wouldn't be like the super strict, very nano cycle of TDD. It would be more of a macro or a mega cycle. But if Blueprint generates the test for you to the point, then it's all kind of, the code you got had tests written for it, at least for the happy path, right? So then you can go back to practicing TDD because basically you kind of just automatically created and technically followed TDD because you had code with tests that were just kind of given to you. So then you would write the test or tweak these tests for your customizations and could practice TDD back at that really, really nano cycle again. So I've always wanted Blueprint to generate these tests, so it's going to be even nicer to kind of have that happen. Okay, let's finish this out because again, this is a very bold test to start with. It's going to really give us everything. We probably could have started with something a bit smaller, but to the point of kind of that mega cycle, we're just jumping right in here again, just as some motivation. Because if I have a couple failing tests, then I can work on making them pass over the weekend and do a little recap, early next week and hopefully launch this feature. Okay, so we verified that it did save effectively here, and we verified the redirect and the flash title here. Okay, so that leaves kind of this middle chunk here, which is where we get even more in depth into testing. So what this means with send, dispatch, and fire is that we're actually going to have to fake these guys. So we're going to want to do mail, fake, and to that point, we're going to want to import the test facade. Yep, there it is. Good. So we're going to fake out mail. We're going to fake out event. Again, this is all part of the setup. And we're going to fake out our queue. There it is. Fake. So we got to do all this setup. And then down here, we're going to do some cooler stuff like this. So we're going to say mail, assert, sent, and we're going to want to make sure the review notification class was sent, that mailable. So let's bring that into the fold. Whoops. That will actually be generated with your code, but it's not generated in, of course, Blueprint itself. So let's put this in the right spot. So we're going to use app mail that guy. All right, cool. And then I think the next part of this is a closure. So we're going to want to make sure a couple things. We're going to make sure you sent it to the right person, and then, or the post author in this case, and then also that you sent it the post object that's right here. So let's write that up. Again, this stuff, as we can see, it takes a minute to write. So having all this, I gotta say it again, it's gonna be pretty awesome. Okay, so we get this function. It gets the mailable in this case, and then we're going to want to use this post, of course. And we can do some things here like return some truthy bits. So I can say something to the effect of, what can we say here? We can say that the mailable has to of the post author. Cool. To post author. You know what? In the real world, this might be something like post author email. So I just kind of noticed that. Again, we're gonna leave this the way it's written here. There's some things though, actually going back and looking at this that I noticed. So, and then we're also going to say that the mailables post this is a model method, the same as the post that we got back from the database, or the one that was created. So this is pretty nice. So again, we're testing that you set the has with the has to, and that the mailables post property, which is publicly accessible, so the mailable can get it as well. So I used to make those private, but it's just easier to make everything public, not only from testing, but then it's passed down to the email template, without having to wire it up. So that's kind of nice. I don't really like that it's public, but again, it's just easier. So don't fight the framework. Okay, so that one's pretty good. And let's do some more stuff. Let's do this, and it's really the same syntax here. So I'm just gonna copy pasta this here for a second. So we're gonna do the new post class, and this is gonna be the event. And we'll want post again, and we're going to want to make sure, let's see here, I think it's post. You pass in, I think you actually pass in the arguments. I always forget. I think the second parameter is technically the arguments that come in. So you get the event object itself, and then you get its arguments. So we'll still use post. Again, I might have to clean this up, so we'll have to test this. We'll have to test the test. But basically, we want to make sure that argument 0 is, assuming that it's a model. So argument 0 is going to be the post. So that's that, and let's bring in the post. So what did we end up creating? Let's go back to that post controller. I think this is just app events. Yeah, okay. So use app events posts or new post. And to that point, let's just take this other one as well, app jobs sync media. All right, scroll back down here. So arguments, that's why that doesn't like us. And let's copy this one more time, and we'll say Q assert pushed. I guess it's just pushed. Yeah, we're not pushing it to any kind of queue just yet. There's no syntax for that. And so this is going to get the job that you pushed, and we'll want to make sure that, in this case, job post is the post. And that's not assert sent, that's assert dispatched. And new post. Why doesn't it like us there? Sync media. Didn't I get you? I did. Oh, it just doesn't know what they are. Okay, so let's review this, and then we'll set up the test to actually use this, and that's probably all the time I'm going to have today. I might not even have that much time. We'll have to check. But let's recap this, and then we'll stop there. How about that? Okay, so if we want Blueprint to generate a test, this README example is really where we want to start, and because it's going to give us the most robust demonstration of not only what Blueprint can do, but also push us to really create all the different nuances of a test. So it's going to force us to do the traits at the top, right? Both the traits are going to need to come in. We're going to have naming here of the controller action contextually. What is that thing kind of ultimately doing? Is it redirecting? Is it doing a view? Is it saving to the database? Like, what kind of things does it do? We're going to have to do test setup. We're going to have to do the expectations of the test, and then of course, however we need to execute the test. So this one's pretty straightforward. Again, we talked about it before, but we're just going to get all the posts and render a view. So set up some posts in the database, get the post index, assert that we got a 200 response or an OK response. We're going to assert the view, and we're going to assert the view has all the posts from the database. For store, we're going to actually do 2 test cases. One, because we know we have this validation, and I have a handy little assertion that makes sure we're using the form validation, which is how Blueprint generates form validation or data validation, is it uses a form request. So all the more reason just to go ahead and generate this little test. And then the main test for the happy path of store is that it returns a redirect. And it might be nice to say something like saves post and returns and redirects. How about that? So there we go. So again, just kind of working out the naming convention here, but it's basically going to be controller action, the primary action of that controller, and then maybe any like additional return actions. So what does the return do? Does it display a view? Does it redirect? What does it do? Okay, so we got test set up here. This is a lot more complicated now because we're going to have to read that validate statement to make sure we set up the proper data to send across the wire. We're also going to have to read additional statements to see if there's any other setup that needs to happen. So in this case, setting up the mail fake, the queue fake, the event fake, all done for these lines. Then we actually perform our our action, which is sending a post request to the post store route, which will get generated with that fake data. Then we're going to do kind of a sanity check just to make sure that post got saved so we can use it nice and easily later. So just an eloquent query, nothing fancy about that. You could use the database assertions if you wanted. The thing I don't like about using those directly is if you need to test or you need that record in the database to like do some checks later, then you don't really get it back and you end up having to do an eloquent query anyways. So if I know I'm going to use that, I like to generate code or write code this way, and therefore that's the way Blueprint's going to do it. Okay, so we're going to assert that we just got one back. We definitely shouldn't see multiple posts with those, fake title and content. We're going to do some assertions on the actual response. So we got that redirect we expected, the flash message. And then finally, all of those very strong assertions using Laravel's facades, Laravel's fake facades, and its internal methods to check those. But not just check that they were called, but also that they got the right data and were sent correctly. So I'll probably need to check some of these again. That event, I'm pretty sure that's the way the arguments work, but I'll double check that and touch this up. So the goal now is basically going to be the tedious path of making this work, but there is a precedent for this. If we look at the controller generator, what it's doing is basically the same thing this test is going to do, because it's generating a test for the controller, so it's generating the same steps. It's just going to be putting out different code, right? So we know that we're going to loop over the controllers, and we're basically just going to do the same thing. We're going to grab that stub, that test stub that we set up, and basically populate it with a couple different things. So we're going to fix the namespace, and we're going to mess with its methods and its imports based on all of those bits here. So if we go and look at build methods, we just go farther and farther down the line, and eventually we just get a very large, for each statement where we test, are you a send statement? This send here. Yeah, okay, well then that means you're going to have some stuff that goes in the arrange. You're going to have some stuff that goes in the assertions. Maybe you also have some stuff that goes in the action. So I'm just going to kind of categorize all that stuff like we're doing here in the controller generator. So that's kind of my plan of attack. We'll see how it goes. But now that I have the test for it, I can jump right in and get a little farther. And again, because all this code's written, I'm not too worried about practicing, TDD at the nanocycle. I'm glad to start with a very large initial test. Here's this huge fixture that I kind of expect, and I'm just going to whittle away at it. I'm not going to try to write it all in one go, but hopefully I'll start seeing, oh, okay, good, I've got, the class stub. I've got all the different methods. Now I'm filling out the assertions. So that'll be that. Like I said, I'll do another live stream maybe Monday. I never really end up having time to do them on Friday, even when I want to. And there's not a lot of people that watch then anyways. So thanks everyone for taking 30 minutes or so out of your time this afternoon. I hope you all are enjoying Blueprint. Definitely tweet me, let me know. Get on the issues out there. If we open these back up. I know there's a couple of open issues kind of to that point. So feel free to tack on some stuff here, feature requests, whatever, or if you just like using it, or talk about the code that you have generated with Blueprint, definitely throw it out on Twitter. So I like seeing that kind of stuff. So thanks again, and I'll see you all Monday.